Hello and welcome to Marketing Speak. I'm your host, Stefan Spencer, and today I'm very excited to have Tina Forsyth with us. Tina is the founder of the Certified Online Business Manager, or OBM, training, the only program of its kind to train high-end virtual managers. Her sweet spot is helping visionaries find and hire the right people to take their business to the next level. Tina, it's so great to have you on the show. And first of all, I want to thank you for the concept of an OBM, because I had never heard of that before you, and I had never known that was a thing. And so I've taken on OBMs through the course of the evolution of my business. So thank you for your gifts and adding that to my life, to my business, and to many others.
Oh, yeah, of course. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, for me, it was a very natural thing that, as I was doing what I was doing myself years ago and didn't know what to call myself, started using that phrase, using that title of online business manager for some of the work I was doing at the time. And over the years, in various ways, of course, it kind of became what it is today. And of course, I love hearing that too, Stefan, that, you're working with OBMs, or that you're connected with people in different ways and working together. That's very exciting to hear from my perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I even worked with a company that provides OBMs, and that's all they do is provide OBMs, not other types of assistants or VAs or anything like that. They're OBMs, and we made some progress on some projects working with that company and the OBM that was assigned to us. So, where did this come from, this concept of OBM, and how did it evolve over time?
Yeah, so about 20-ish years ago, give or take, I had discovered the coaching world and decided I wanted to become a coach. Did some coach training, did a few different things at that time. And truthfully, I hung my shingle out as what did I call myself? Business, life, and career coach. I mean, honestly, it was like I called myself everything. And truthfully, didn't know what the heck I was doing, right? Like as far as getting clients. So I didn't have clients. I didn't have things going on. I had an opportunity come up to work behind the scenes of what was at the time the largest coach training and membership organization. Coachville still is around in a different format than it was then. At that time, it was run by Thomas Leonard. And I jumped in there kind of thinking like, hey, yeah, I'll just do this on the side. I came on board initially as like an event manager, and then I became the right-hand person to the general manager, and very quickly discovered that I loved being a part of behind the scenes of a really fast-growing, fast-moving, creative business. And so there was some changes in the business. Unfortunately, Thomas passed away about 2003. And with some of the changes going on, I found myself in this space of like, okay, what do I do next? Do I kind of jump back into this coaching world, or do I continue to do what I had started doing, working with that company, which was really managing everything behind the scenes? And so for lack of a better term at the time, I didn't really know what to call myself. There were certainly people out there working as virtual assistants and such at that point, but that didn't really fit for me. I knew I was working more in partnership with clients. I was working at a higher level with clients, and so started calling myself an online business manager at that point in time. And it kind of naturally evolved from there in a few really cool ways. I would work with my clients who were in kind of the six, entering into the 7-figure range. I would help them run the business, run the team, run the operations, run everything behind the scenes so that they could be out front doing what they did best and working with clients and marketing and all kinds of great things. And over time, I started to notice a couple of trends, essentially. There were more and more business owners coming to me. A lot of them, of course, from the coaching world or the online world in some fashion. That's very much who my clients were at the time. And they were coming to me and saying, Tina, I need to hire someone who does what you do. I need to hire someone who's going to work with me at this level in my business. And of course, I was full at the time, and there was only so much to go around of me personally. I also started noticing that there were more and more people out there that were starting to call themselves OBMs, and or reaching out and saying, hey, I want to do this as well. I want to work a little differently with my clients. In some cases, if they were working under the VA umbrella and such. And so based on both of those things going on at the same time, I decided in 2008 to write my book, very aptly titled Becoming an Online Business Manager. And truthfully, I thought that would be it. When I wrote that book in 2008, I was still working as an OBM for a few clients. I was, doing a couple of things on the side, doing some VA training and such as well. But I thought, okay, I'm going to write this book. Anybody who wants to become an OBM, they can read the book and then off you go. Have fun, just do that thing. But little did I know to some degree what I was getting myself into. Shortly after the book came out, there was demand for more. There were people wanting more. There were people wanting to learn more and understand more about the role. And so after the book, I started our International Association of Online Business Managers, which was then and still is the home of our OBM community, in particular, our certified OBM community. I also started in 2009 our OBM certification program and training. And so that training is where I was working with different professionals. Some would come from the VA world, some were coming from the corporate world. They were all wanting to operate at this level with clients. And so we started our OBM training and certification program back in 2009 and continue to do that same thing in various ways ever since then as well, too.
Great. Yeah, so for those who are not really familiar with that term OBM, how do you encapsulate in a few sentences the difference between an OBM and a virtual assistant?
Yeah, there's a couple of key differences. So a virtual assistant they are there to do a specific thing on behalf of the business. And they're ultimately, depending on the VA, they might be a tech person, they might be admin, they might be marketing focused, but they're very much showing up as a doer. Whereas an OBM is showing up more in that management space. And I define management as making sure the right things get done in the right way, at the right time, and by the right people. And so an OBM is responsible for all of it. They're responsible to make sure everybody is getting their stuff done, not just the stuff that's on their own plate. They're responsible to make sure that projects are moving forward and people have what they need to get things done and the business is being built on a pretty smooth foundation. And so there's that distinction between doing and managing is pretty key in that. And at a certain point, a business is going to need an OBM. I would say every business needs a VA and or a number of VAs. In some cases, every business is gonna find value and benefit in hiring VA level support. Not every business is ready to bring on an OBM yet. So I get a little tongue in cheek to say it this way, perhaps, but you need to have a business to be managed before you bring in an OBM. So it's really kicking in at that point where the business has a proven business model and some consistent revenue, and it's time to really build on a foundation. And so the OBM is really more partnering with the business owner in a lot of ways to make sure that everything's getting taken care of in the business and everything's moving forward and things are moving forward in the right way, in the right time, by the right people doing the right things, as opposed to just being focused on their particular piece of what it is they do in the company.
Right. And when you say that not every company is ready for an OBM, is there a certain size in revenue that you have to hit before it just makes sense for you? Do you have a certain number of projects or team members? Like, what are the criteria that make it pretty obvious you need an online business manager?
Yeah, it's definitely in the lower six-figure range where this starts to really show itself. And so, depending on the business model, the specific numbers might vary a little bit from person to person. But usually in the early days of starting a business, and we've all been there to varying degrees and or are still there in some cases, that sort of 0 to 6 figure journey is often about what am I offering? Who am I offering it to? What's going to work best here? What does this look like? And as we really define what the business model is, and as we really define how we're going to sell this, and we find that groove of, okay, people are buying this thing I want to offer, then that's where things can start to grow. And so most clients look to hire an OBM when they're in that early six-figure, usually by the time they're hitting 250, like the $250,000 a year mark. That's usually the point where it's like almost it has to happen, if that makes sense. So in the early six-figure stage, they may start to feel it. Like, yeah, I really want somebody else in here. I mean, here's what happens when our business is growing. And especially when we hit that point of, okay, this business is becoming bigger than me. And because, all of us that want to continue to grow and expand, we will hit that point where this business becomes bigger than who we are. And we may have different people on the team already. We might have a handful of VAs. We might have other people that are supporting us, in particular in this online world. If we don't get management level support into the mix, then that lands on our shoulders as the owner, as the CEO, as the founder, as the visionary, et cetera, to be the one to start managing the day-to-day. And so a lot of times clients will come to us, they'll come to our community when they're in that space of like, we actually had somebody post an RFP this morning, a request for proposal, to our certified OBM community this morning, just saying very clearly her example was, or her situation is, all right, I don't have any time anymore to focus on marketing, to focus on selling, to focus on growing this business and moving it forward because I'm so caught up in the day-to-day of everything going on. If we don't have management level support in place, then it's going to land on our shoulders. And then we can find ourselves spending all day with, all right, who's doing what? Does everybody have what they need? Is this getting done? Is this moving forward? What's coming up? Do we have a plan in place? Do we have the resources? Like all of these things that fit into this management layer, essentially in the business, they're either going to be on our shoulders and or they're going to be on the shoulders of someone else in the company. And if it's on our shoulders for too long, we will hit a certain point where we just don't get past that. And often that sort of do or die moment does tend to kick in around the $250,000 mark, right? Where it's literally like, I'm so caught up in this, I can't even focus on growing anymore. And so the business can get stuck or stalled at that particular place. And so it could be a little later, or a little earlier, depending on the business. There's a budgetary consideration too. In the earlier stages of business growth, that 0 to 6-figure range, I mean, we're going to have a budget for a certain amount of help and not a budget for necessarily everything at that point. But definitely in that kind of 100 to 250 mark is the sweet spot to be bringing an OBM in.
Yeah. Dan Sullivan, founder of Strategic Coach, talks about how the solopreneur who's trying to do it all is the rugged individualist, and that doesn't scale and you burn yourself out. So stop doing that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yet it's a bit of a hard habit to break sometimes. I mean, I don't know if this is true for you, Stefan. It's been true for myself in my journey and many of the colleagues and clients I've worked with over the years. We start our business being that like rugged individual, that solopreneur that for various reasons it's on our shoulders and it's up to us to do most of the work and drive the business forward and all of this kind of stuff. And it's almost a hard habit to break in some cases, to realize like, oh, wait a minute, I don't have to be the one driving this. I don't have to be the only one who's thinking about these things. You know, what was some of the value of having an online business manager in the mix on the team is even that space of like someone else who's going to think on behalf of the business, someone else who's going to be looking forward, someone else who's going to be, you know, they can wake up in the middle of the night and wonder whether or not things got done. Or even better, they're going to have plans and projects and stuff laid out so that they don't have to have those middle of the night moments. But it's having that partnership in place that for most of us, you know, when we haven't experienced it yet, or we don't even recognize that there is a different way to do it, it can feel almost foreign in that sense. I know the first time, it was actually a little bit funny in a way, when I hired my first online business manager to work with me. So I had mentioned, wrote my book in 2008, started the certification and the association in 2009. I hired a coach. We're coming into 2010, planning everything for 2010. And at that point, I was very focused on, all right, I personally am not going to be working with clients anymore as an OBM. I let go of my last couple of clients. I was focused solely on the certification and the support and the mentoring in that community. And my coach at the time is like, Tina, you do realize you need to hire your own OBM right now. I was like, oh my gosh. Yes, I do. Like it had not even crossed my mind, even though I was the one training OBMs, and of course had been that person as well too. But my default mode was so much of, you know, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm in the hub of everything, and I'm in the thick of everything, and that was just so much of how I operated that it didn't even occur to me until my coach said that to me, that, oh my gosh, yes, I do need to hire someone for myself.
Well, you know what they say, I don't know who discovered water, but it wasn't a fish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, exactly.
Yeah. So if you're wanting to hire an OBM, do you want someone who's full-time and fully focused on your business, or do you want somebody who's got multiple clients and this is something that they're juggling you with X number of other projects and engagements?
Yeah, I would say the answer is actually in between the two of those. And it will depend a little bit on where your business is at. You know, the OBMs really specialize in that 6 to 7 figure journey, right? They're working with a lot of times working with their clients who are growing through 6 into that 7, early 7-figure space in the business. And truthfully, when we're in particular, when we're in that 6 to 7 figure space, we don't want or need full-time employees, right? But we do want people that are dedicated to us. And so an online business manager, they're generally going to be working with maybe 2 or 3 clients on a pretty in-depth level. And that's by nature of the role. I mean, an OBM is plugged in, when they're full on plugged in and managing the day-to-day of your business, they're in your business every day. It's not just let me do 3 hours a week on a Thursday kind of scenario. I mean, they are plugged into the business each and every day. And so that's the nature of the role, if you will. And that's also the nature of what they want for themselves. I mean, a good OBM really wants to be able to focus on 2 or maybe 3 clients max. And so it's very different than, say, when you're working with a virtual assistant. And some of us have had this experience, even maybe on both sides of the coin, if you've hired VAs and or have been a VA. A lot of times virtual assistants or even other professionals, maybe marketing professionals or like different types of professionals out there that we may work with, they are often juggling multiple clients at a time. And by all means, there's ways to do that well, you know, and then there's ways where maybe they're not doing it as well as they could be. But I like to look at it through the lens of, and we teach this in our program too, to our certified OBM program, right? That I look at it through the lens of every client should feel like your number one client. So they might have a couple of other people they're working with as an OBM, but they're plugged into your business every day. You know they are there. You can feel that they are there. You can see that they are there. Now, they're not full-time employees. I mean, 7 figures and up, you may be looking at full-time employees at that point. That's often where, especially in our online world, that's often where we'll start to look at hiring full-time, dedicated, et cetera, people, be it OBM or otherwise, of course, at that stage, maybe a little before. 7 figures in some cases. But even if a person is not full-time working for you, you still want to feel like and know that they're there. And if they're juggling too much or they've got too much going on, I mean, that would be a problem for me too. With having an OBM on my team, I really want and need to feel like that person is there. And so it's definitely a question to ask of someone for those that are looking to hire an OBM or may want to be doing this at some point down the road, bringing somebody on, just a very real conversation about, tell me about your business. Tell me about your, how many clients are you working with, or how much availability do you have in a day? Because I really want someone who's going to be plugged into my business and where that the work that we're doing together is a priority for you.
Yeah, got it. And are there certain companies that seem to have gotten this down really well, like maybe an OBM type of agency that is churning out all these great OBMs that have gone through your certification program, and you end up referring a lot of folks who are asking for OBMs to an agency like that?
We have, through our association, we have a directory where you can connect with a certified OBM. And we also have an RFP, a request for proposal process there as well. And both of those are free of charge for anyone who's wanting to look at finding someone. The people in our certified OBM community, the only people you'll connect with through our association are those who are certified. And some of them work individually, one-on-one, they're that type where they want to work with 2 or 3 clients and be really dedicated, in deep, long-term. Some of our certified OBMs do have an agency, like you mentioned earlier, Stefan, as well, an agency where they may have other OBMs on the team who work as part of the company and work with people that way. So there's a little bit of variety, or a few different options that you might find based on that. But all of them, especially through our certified OBM community, they are coming in with that mindset of, I'm here to be a success partner for this client. I'll mention this too, back when I was looking to write my book back in 2008. One of the things that sparked me writing the book was, truthfully, feeling a little bit annoyed when I would see people out there who at that point were starting to call themselves OBMs, but they weren't actually working at the OBM level. They were working as VAs with clients, right? They were just calling themselves OBMs. And we still see this come up here today as well. It's part of what sparked me to write the book. It's part of what drove me to create the association and the certification, was to really lay out that standard for, this is what it looks like to work with an OBM. And so to make sure when we're looking to hire somebody and we're looking to bring somebody on board, that we're being very clear that, I'm looking for somebody who's going to be in the business day to day. I'm looking for somebody who's going to manage, who's going to lay out plans, who's going to manage projects, who's going to manage the team. They're going to manage operations. They're going to help build systems. They're going to drive things forward. They're going to, you're looking for somebody who's really going to play that role in your company. Right. There's great people out there who work as OBMs who aren't certified. There's not so great people out there who work as OBMs as well, too, that use the title OBM. And so it's really important to make sure that, first and foremost, we're clear on what it is we want and need someone to do, the role we want them to play in our own business. And then as we're finding someone, as we're exploring our options out there, that we're making sure that they're on the same page as well too. I've seen this in particular even in the past couple of years, because, say what you will about 2020, It's been a year, and at the same time, we've seen ridiculous amounts of growth in many cases with a lot of, online-based businesses, virtual-based businesses having to come online and figure this whole online thing out and so on. So alongside that growth, there's been this explosion throughout the year, starting kind of in the later spring months, of more and more people who are coming online and putting up that OBM shingle, if you will. And so part of what's key about our association, and truthfully the reason why it exists in the first place, is just to have that level of standard of the person that you're hiring, and to know when you come to our association, and you might search through the directory, you may connect with some great people there. That's what most people do. You might submit an RFP where people can apply to you directly, reply to you directly. You know what you're getting then, because they've gone through a process to get, the training process, the certification process, and so on, to really be owning what that space is.
Yeah. So is there a set of tests, or what's the rigor that you put these OBMs through in order to get that certification status?
Yeah, we're not nice to them. We make it a little bit tough. So they do complete an accredited training first and foremost. And so we have a training program that really teaches them those fundamental areas of support. So it's teaching them the planning and the project management. It's teaching them the operations side of things, the automation piece, the team management piece, the metrics, getting into some metrics and tracking and such as well. That, along with the leadership components and various other things that kick in when you're working at the OBM level. Once they complete that training process, that's where they come into the association for the certification piece. And our certification is structured as what we call our certification week. I'm not a believer in or a fan of what I call like a rubber stamp certification, where it's like, oh, hey, I bought this program. Okay, now I'm a certified X, or even I bought this program and I took a multiple choice test online and now I'm certified, right? Like, because that doesn't really let us, that doesn't really we don't really know, like, does that person really know their stuff or not? What does that look like? And so we designed our certification process like this years ago. We've kept it very similar up to this very day. Believe me, there's times where we're like, we could probably do this a lot easier if we did a multiple choice test. Like, the whole thing could be a lot easier if we wanted it to be. But certification week is where everybody comes into certification week and they get real life client projects. I was going to say thrown at them. Maybe that sounds a little harsh, but it kind of is thrown at them throughout that entire week. They have to complete and respond to those projects as they would when they're working directly with clients. And so our certification week is very purposely designed to be as close to them working with actual clients without them actually working with those clients yet, right? And in some cases they do, of course, have clients of their own already. But truthfully, when people come into certification week, and we prepare them for this too, that this is going to happen, but they'll often start the week thinking, what did I get myself into? Yikes, this is a lot of work, or this is really hard, or this guy, I didn't expect this kind of stuff. And they end the week in the space of, there's two things that are really key about our certification process. Yes, they get tested on what they submit. So they work on projects throughout the week. Those projects get submitted. They get turned over to our certification committee. That's a committee of experienced certified OBMs. They grade the projects and they get very much graded based on their results. And if they pass right away, great. If they don't, they get feedback, they have redos, they have things like that kick in. So there's a pretty rigorous kind of grading process that comes into play. But the secondary piece, which in some ways it's definitely as important as that first piece, is they've had the experience of dealing with something that was tough and challenging for them. And to me, and of course to our community at large, that's one of the things that becomes really, really key, because some of you may relate to this experience of bringing somebody on board in the team in any kind of role. And when the going gets tough, that person disappears, or they back out, or they whatever, right? We don't want that happening. We don't want that happening. And yet we always lovingly say to our OBMs as they're going through this process that this is what it's going to be like when you're working with your clients. Like, there's going to be things popping up. You're going to get things thrown at you that maybe you haven't done before, or maybe you haven't seen before. They're going to, come up with, I got this great new idea. Let's do it tomorrow kind of thing. Like, there's going to be these very real life scenarios when you're working at this level with clients that we want them to be prepared and ready for. And we want them to have that experience of working through stuff like that. And so they come to the end of the certification week journey, not only submitting projects and being graded and so on, but having another level of confidence and like, all right, yes, I can do this. Yes, I'm really getting what it is to work at this level with clients, so that they're able to jump into and bring that to the clients that they're working with. So yeah, we're not overly nice. I mean, I do warn people up front. I'm like, you're probably not going to like us too much for the first part of this week, maybe. And then by the end of the week, you'll love us, right? Like, it really is a purposeful process that way.
Yeah. I was thinking of the words Hell Week while you were describing Certification Week.
A little bit of that, yes.
Yeah.
Although if we said that up front, they might
Yeah.
Away.
I pay you for this? Shouldn't I get paid for this? Yeah. And so let's say that you're looking to hire an OBM, you look through the directory, you put in an RFP. Is there a trial period or a trial project that you want to give, or you just trust that because they're certified, they're going to be a good fit, and then it's just full steam ahead?
I always look at the first 90 days as the dating period with someone. So there's definitely things throughout the process, the interview process, that we want to be aware of and that we want to be purposeful with. And it's worth noting as well, too, that hiring a contractor is not the same as hiring an employee. And so even the interview process itself, there's distinctions there that kick in that are not the same as say, especially those of us who've maybe worked in the corporate world or had a brick and mortar business, or in whatever way, shape, or form, we've hired employees in the past and we're used to that entire process and flow. I teach and approach the process very differently when we're hiring a contractor, and whether that's an OBM or anyone else too, right? Because here's one of the key distinctions to be aware of. When you're hiring a contractor, that's actually a business-to-business relationship. From our perspective, when we're hiring somebody, it's an interview. From their perspective, it's actually a sales call, right? And so part of what's really important to tap into, and I have an interview questionnaire I'm happy to share with people here. I can pop that link to you, Stefan, if you want to share that. Yeah, I've got some very purposeful questions and ways I like to approach this. But ultimately, part of the interview process is, the short version of this process really is, I like to say we're responsible for the what, and they need to bring the how. So when I'm looking to bring someone on board, I need to be really clear coming into that conversation. What am I looking for here? What are the deliverables? What are the results? How am I going to know that this would be a successful working relationship? What is it that I want and need this person to bring to the table? And so we come into that interview conversation just really laying out, here's the what. And then it's up to them to determine the how, right? Like anybody who is a contractor, anybody who is a freelancer, a solopreneur, they own an agency, whatever it is. I mean, they literally are a business in and of themselves. And I take a pretty firm stance that they need to be showing up as the expert on their end. And so when we lay out our what in a conversation, we get to a point, and there might be some, they should be asking some questions and clarifying and things like that. We get to a point in the conversation that I like to call it the sigh of relief moment in that conversation, where, when we're talking to that person and we're having this discussion and we've been clear on the what, there's essentially one of two things that'll happen at this point in the conversation. They're either going to plug in and say, this is great, totally get what you're looking for, here's how I can help you. And then they start laying it out, right? It would be, we would start here, we would go there, we would whatever, boom, boom, boom. Or you might come to that point in the conversation and they might say something like, this is great, I love what you're doing, how can I help you? I'm here, whatever you need, I'm happy to help you. The first is an example of a leader mindset. Like, that's a person who's really owned and understands their expertise and what they bring to the table here. They're showing up as a leader in this conversation. The second is an example of a follower mindset, basically. And, I can't tell you how often I've worked with business owners, clients, conversations at an event, a mastermind, talking to people about stuff like this, where they'll say, oh my gosh, Tina, I hired this great person. We had the best conversation in the world. I brought him on board. And now I don't know what to give that person. And they're sitting there waiting for me to give them things, or I'm too busy to give them things to do. And my response is, you hired a follower. Like, if you hire a follower, you're going to need to tell them what to do, right? They're going to sit back and wait for you to tell them what to do. It's not a reflection on that person per se. I mean, they may be a very capable person. They just haven't owned their expertise yet, right? Like, but here's the thing is that if you hire a follower, it really is either you're not going to know what to tell them to do. You don't know how to do the things that they need to do. You don't want to know how to do those things, and or you're too busy to be telling someone what to do all the time. Whereas when you hire a leader, they are plugging in and essentially taking over in whatever it is you hired them for. Maybe you hired them to revise your website. Great. Have them plug in and start to lead that process through design or copywriting or whatever it is. It doesn't, so it can apply to any type of role, not just to the OBM role. But I very much want to get to that point in a conversation in that interview process where it is that, because when somebody will say, great, got it, here's how I can help you, it's like, that's the sigh of relief. This person gets it. You can almost energetically feel it too, right? Where it's like they're taking over, they're stepping in, they're leading at that point. Whereas if they're saying, oh my gosh, that's great, just whatever you want, whatever you need, I'm here, kind of thing. How can I help you? We love that. I mean, that's one of the more common mistakes I'll see in hiring is, we think that's a good thing when somebody's showing up that way. And the intent of it is certainly a good thing, but it often just doesn't work. And so when somebody's bringing that what to the table, they're bringing that how to the table. You brought the what, they plugged into the what, they're laying out the how for you. That's a thing, an important thing to look for, even through those initial interview / sales conversations that are happening when we're hiring somebody on the team. And then, there's other things you can do as well, too, that certain people like different assessments. You might bring in some sample or trial projects of some kind to have somebody work on, or you might just jump into doing some work together. But, even before I had my business, I worked as a recruiter. Back in the day, as I like to say, I worked in recruiting, I did placement, I did things like that. I mean, hiring can be a challenging thing, and we can have an amazing hiring process up front, but we don't actually know what it is to work together until we're actually working together. Right. And so I also like to look at that 90-day dating period as, we don't want a Vegas marriage necessarily. We don't want to be like, oh my gosh, we had the best conversation, woohoo, we're getting married now, boom, this is forever. I finally found my person, and then a couple of weeks later, it's like, oh no, yikes, like there's something going on here. There's something wrong here. When we set up the agreement up front, and we teach this to our certified OBMs too, right? We teach them the idea of that first 90 days is a dating period, because you want to have very clear expectations, very clear agreements on priorities and goals and what you're working on. They're getting to know the business, they're getting to know you, they're getting to know the team. And at the same time, there might be fires for them to be putting out. There could be things that are like a bit in crisis mode. There could be jumping into the middle of a launch or who knows what. Like there can be various things going on in the business at the time. But we want to have as much clarity as possible heading into that 90-day period, that this is what it's going to look like to be successful here together. And then to work together with that throughout that time. By the end of 90 days, and if not before then, by all means, but by the end of 90 days, you'll know whether this is, all right, this is a good fit or not, kind of thing, right? So it's making sure that there's definitely some time allowed for that. And it kind of takes that pressure off too of like, oh my gosh, I got to find the perfect person up front. Now, again, the Vegas marriage scenario, like we don't want to have the Vegas marriage scenario kicking in that way. It allows some time to be working together, trying it on, etc., finding the way that works together, and also allows a bit of space of like, yeah, this isn't working out for whatever reason.
Yeah. You talked about that sigh of relief when you realize this person gets being outcome focused instead of activity focused, and gets being proactive instead of reactive, and that you can just let that person lead this and take the outcome and own it.
Yes. Because that's the thing. I mean, and again, especially when we're working with contractors, if they're not willing to own an outcome, then I don't think I would work with them. Mm-hmm. Like there are times if we have scenarios where we've got, say, really clear processes and an SOP and all that kind of stuff laid out in the business, then yes, you might want to hire a follower to just plug in and do those things. I mean, it's worth noting too, though, that pretty much puts them in employee category, right? Like from a legal, et cetera, perspective, it definitely puts them into that category a bit. So it's something to be aware of. But most businesses I know, and most of what's going on, especially in that 6 to 7 figure journey, is we need the people plugging in. We need the people. I mean, an OBM will work to lay out those processes and SOPs and systems and all of that. That's part of the operations management piece of what they're doing. And so we want somebody who's plugging in and doing that and bringing that to the table, instead of us feeling like we have to continually be the ones to drive that from our end as well.
Yeah. As part of the certification process, are they given a library of SOPs to learn and be able to modify or base the final SOPs on for their clients?
Yeah, one of the things they're taught in the operations piece is the top 10 business systems, and there's a whole, checklist and layout of, all right, these are the things they need to be looking at. There's templates or, it gets customized depending on the business as well too. But that's absolutely a part of it.
Mm-hmm. And how many hours of training do you provide these OBMs?
It's a 90-day training, and so they have the actual training hours are about 32 hours of training, and then along with the actual training sessions and such, they have different calls and support and so on. It varies a little bit from trainer to trainer with that piece, but they're getting that ongoing support throughout the training process. And also as they become certified, somebody said this the other day, actually, I thought it was really great. Someone in our certified OBM community, they were talking with a prospect, with somebody who became a client of theirs. And, I love the way she shared this, is she said to this person, okay, when you're hiring me, you're getting the whole community as well too. Because when somebody is a certified OBM, they're plugged into and they're a big part of our community. And at this stage, it's over 300 people that are a part of that, 300 active members of our certified OBM community. I mean, almost every day, somebody will hop in and be like, my client just asked me about this tool and I've never even heard of it before. Like, who knows this? Who knows something about this? Have you come across this before? And there's always somebody who's saying, oh, yes, this or that. Or they're saying, I'm a little stuck on this. Can somebody help me out here? Can somebody walk me through this? Whatever that is. So there's a lot of support ongoing that kicks in for them as well, too, which becomes hugely valuable for the clients that they're working with as well, because it's not, oh, I'm relying just solely on what this one person has in their head. I mean, because I think especially at this stage in the game, it's pretty much impossible for anyone to know everything, especially in this online world that changes all the time and so often. But they have that alongside the training, alongside the certification process. They really have that community to be able to plug into as well.
Yeah, that's great. It's really essential. I see it because trying to find, for example, let's say a Kartra developer or expert to go in and recode all the funnels that were built in Infusionsoft because the company is going to migrate from Infusionsoft to Kartra. How do you find that person? It's so much a question of who, yes, not how. And you want to give it to the OBM to say, figure out who that who is. Yeah.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. When that comes up and you have an OBM on the team, it's like, all right, you go find this person. It's no longer on our shoulders to be able to and have to find every single person that we need in the team. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. How many SOPs should a company have that's in the 6 to 7 figure range, like low 7 figures?
I don't have a specific number per se, but because we look at it through the lens of the top 10 systems. Okay. And that area of, the different areas. So it'll depend a bit on the business to business as far as the actual numbers of what's in there. But I would say when you're looking at top 10 and like say 6 to 10 per section there, right? It also depends a little bit on how you define an SOP. So when we're talking about processes and such, for example, with our association, essentially it's a membership. It's an association. It's a membership. We have all kinds of things that we do as a part of that membership. There's a number of SOPs that are just very specific to everything we do to run that program. A to Z, everything from, the process of welcoming people into the association, the process of like payments and monthly calls and newsletters and communication that goes out, the process of canceling if somebody's leaving. So there's all kinds, like in that particular, or that particular piece of our company has a whole bunch of different processes and SOPs that are dedicated very much to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most companies don't have enough SOPs. There's only been one company I've worked with, as having them as a client, where they had copious numbers of SOPs. So much so that they had to have a document kind of sorting through all the SOPs so you could figure out where they were and how recently it was updated and all this sort of stuff. There were probably hundreds of SOPs.
Oh yeah.
Which was great, but it can be overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming, and it takes time to develop them too. I mean, we have within our community, we have some certified OBMs that really specialize in the SOP systems side of things, and they offer packages where they're working with clients really specifically just in that area. And that's generally at least a 6-month and ongoing process, right? Like even a good 6 months of like laying out all of that stuff that's going on in the business and getting those SOPs created and getting everything, getting the entire team on the same page with how things get done and when and why and all of that kind of stuff. I agree with you. I mean, I would say most default to not having near enough. And I've noticed too in the past, I want to say even in the past 2 to 3-ish years, that it feels like more and more businesses want and understand the importance of having those solid SOPs in place. You know, when we started doing this and started talking about this 10-ish years ago, alongside the certification training, at that point, there was still a lot of like, I don't need that stuff. That's for the big guys. You know, we're just going to keep winging it or whatever they were doing. Whereas now, even as in particular, our online business world continues to like grow and mature and all of that as well. There's more and more people who are like, oh my gosh, yeah, we do need this stuff, right? Like, and or they're feeling the pain of not having it in place. I mean, having to reinvent the wheel every time we do something is a real drag.
Yeah. And
real drag, yeah.
If something goes wrong, it's usually not a people problem, it's a process or systems problem. Even if you think that the person is doing something negligent, you as the business owner, it's your responsibility that you have to take on, like, okay, my systems failed. Not the person. It was me. It's me and my systems.
Well, such a great point, because it can also be easy for people to get caught up in that loop of like, I can't find the right person. I can't find the right person. Whereas if it is like you're saying, Stefan, where it's like, oh, let me check the process before I'm checking the person. Oh, check. I don't have a process. Okay, well, there's problem number one to be fixed, right? Or there's no clarity of expectation or whatever. There's different things that kick in. But I do find that often when I work with clients or I'm connected with, fellow colleagues and such that are like, I just can't find the right person. And I feel like this keeps happening over and over and over again. It's usually not about the people that they're hiring. I mean, it is about things like, is there any process? Is there any planning? Is there any, how are you leading that person? Like, there's these key pieces that kick in that really are our responsibility, at least to drive those things, if not to literally create them all. That, if we don't have that stuff in place alongside the right people, then we really do struggle over time.
Yeah. All right, so we're getting close to time. So for the next few minutes, could we switch to maybe a lightning round and just really quick, maybe 15-second, 20-second answers to a handful of questions?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So SOPs, is there a particular software program that you love or recommend, or maybe multiple ones to input the SOP into, to use it as kind of like a checklist? Like, for example, Process Street or Way We Do or Suite Process. Any favorite there?
I'm still a fan of a good old Google Doc in some ways. And in my case, our processes live within Teamwork, which is our project management tool.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. What's your favorite assessment? So personality test assessment type, like Colby, StrengthsFinder, whatever.
Well, I like StrengthsFinder, but Colby for hiring and leadership, by far my favorite. Yeah,
it is great. I love it too. What's your favorite mastermind, or maybe you want to mention a few different masterminds that maybe you participate in or have been a member of in the past?
I'm in a group right now called Tribe for Leaders, run by Kevin Thompson and Jules Duncan, which is relatively new. They just started. I mean, you may know of Kevin or be connected.
Yep, and Jules. Yep.
Yeah, and they just started that earlier this year. I've really enjoyed it. It's a different flavor. It's very much more about connecting and supporting each other and growing together, as opposed to like the traditional mastermindy things.
Yep. Yeah, I know Jules through Joe Polish.
Yes.
And Genius Network. Yep. Cool. And what if you want to have a full-time OBM, but you also don't want to have the issue with the ABC test or AB5 test of like if they're full-time for you, will they pass that test and still be considered a contractor instead of an employee, and thus you don't have to pay back payroll taxes and Medicare and all that?
That will depend where people live my answer will be a bit longer than 15 seconds. But
Okay.
my 15-second answer to that would be, if you are the only person they work for, they should be an employee. Right? Especially if they're in that full-time space. Depending where we are in the world, I know California with AB5 and such is more and more so. There's different things developing everywhere. Certainly an area that still has a lot of gray area, and there are ways to kind of get away with it, if that makes sense. But my default mode really is, if you want a person to be dedicated just to you, they should be an employee.
Right.
Let's make that happen up front versus have something bite you in the butt down the road where you're getting into all kinds of trouble, audits or whatever it is around that, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So last question is, where do we send our listener to if they resonate with this concept of an OBM and they want to have one, and they want to go through this process of filing the RFP or just perusing through your directory?
Yeah, onlinebusinessmanager.com is where they go, and they'll find all kinds of stuff, including some, sample job posting templates and different things like that as well that we have available there.
Awesome. That's fantastic. And thank you so much, Tina, for sharing your brilliance, your wisdom, your experience with this whole world of online business managers, so that our listener can be empowered and get some of the stuff off of their plate that they can then delegate to an OBM.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.